Okay, 9 and 19. You are listening to, you know who you're listening to.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio.
.co.uk with me live, Paul and Andy, and a very good evening to Andy number 2. Hello, Andy. How are you, friend?
Hello there, Paul. Thanks for inviting me. I'm okay, thank you. And hello to you, Andy. All right, then.
We'll have to get his Andy sorted out, won't we?
will.
You'll have to be handy, Andy.
All right. Thanks,
yeah.
Jack. Two Andys.
Now,
do you call me Wild or Odin?
We'll call you Odin. Odin, Mr. Odin will be fine. Tell me where's the name Odin from then? That sounds a very old name.
Well, I chose it because I found it on the internet and it said something about a wild wind going through the night, taking away evil souls. And I thought, well, a Celtic name like that, yeah, I like it. I'm going to use it, and that's Odin Wild Hunt. Really, that's there's probably many different versions, but that's why I chose that one, Paul.
I can see why you like it. Now then, you and I actually spoke for the first time, I would say, around about 4 months ago. And that's where for the people who don't know and are listening, our new listeners, you actually were a guest, we were a host on CMR in the early days. Now, I'm not sure how many shows we actually got through, but I know I certainly got to hear an entire show you did, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But circumstances changed for you, and you had to leave us and move on. And I wonder if you could perhaps tell us just a brief edit of how we've made contact again today, and what happened, and perhaps now that you're back on your feet again, maybe we can get back into broadcasting.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Cheers. Well, at this point in time, I'm actually just to let Paul Giovanni and everybody there know at CMR that actually I'm talking to you from just inside the Welsh border in the UK PLC. Managed to get back to the UK from Ireland, where I was in August, yeah. And I still have my body and my freedom and my van intact, I guess, only just. Basically, I started, I went over to Ireland in June of 2011 and got onto another radio station there. I realised the streaming world was the place for me to try and get the truth out as to what I'd studied even 3 years prior to that. And I had some element of success with that, and obviously on a voluntary basis. And as it turns out, I've through a VoIP software managed to get a great deal of contacts together of people talking about pretty well the same problems that are being faced in Canada, in America, in New Zealand, in Australia, in Ireland, and in the UK, and other parts of the world as well. And some absolutely wonderful people, Paul, as you well know, yourself as well. And there's a lot of rabbit runs to be talking about. But my start is law and legislation. And that's the interest for me. I started going to the Freedom Northwest meetings in Stockport originally before it moved over to Wigan, where Rob took up the helm there, Bollockstrob that is. And I do believe it's going very, very successfully there. So at some point in time, again, through networking on the internet, possibly through Facebook, a friend of a friend got me in touch. Paul Giovanni got in touch with me and asked me if I would like to host on his new streaming station, CMR. I looked at it and I thought, oh, God, yeah, I know most of the people. I see the angle, absolutely brilliant. And so I did so. There was a couple, I think possibly a Tuesday, that I had a couple of hours to myself without guest. But the one you may have heard was that I did finally connect with the lovely Mark Stevens over in America, and we were just talking about all his work, working to question the jurisdiction of the Crown Courts, the whole entirety of the name of fiction and the alleged jurisdiction of a court service, So, and that's really it. And I'm sorry to say, I just managed to work out how to listen to CMR on Blog Talk Radio just now, so I've just missed your prior conversation with Andy, so I wasn't really clued in as to what you were talking about.
Oh, it's okay. We just did our we can't believe it's in the news type 10 or 15 minute intro, because for me, the horror stories that we today call newspapers are just horror stories for me. They're just filled of doom and gloom to make us feel weak and powerless. So we just actually get to our smallest denominator, which is one, which is us, which is me, and everybody reacts in the same way. And I say react purposefully because we don't act, we react to what happens to around us.
Oh, right, yeah.
The habitat is changed and we react. We don't act at all. I wish we did, but we don't. everything that affects the way we think and feel and move through this water world of Oceania is really controlled to such an extent that we can only ever react. In other words, we're second.
I just want to extend on that, Paul, if I may. And before I go on, actually, I also want to say thank you very much to the shout-out that Paul Giovanni made for me a number of months ago, and to everybody who had helped me financially to help me get back to the UK as well, before I forget, because that's very much appreciated. Paul, on that, I observed, I think it was July, I think 2011, when you would have seen the first Occupy movement get to the streets in Wall Street in New York. It struck me at that time that was extremely premature, in that anybody and everybody, they might have gone there with good intention and good feeling, but they didn't know about the entirety of their name of fiction on a birth certificate, which is in fact a sovereign bond, and that they will be expected to give their name to police officers as and when they put the truncheon down on their heads and violently take them away from their aggressive occupying status of the ground that they're in. That sadly is precisely what did happen, and I don't know just how many people have actually learned from their lessons, because if, as far as I'm concerned, I see news stories on Press TV and RT as well on their websites. I don't watch the TV. And I observed today, I was thinking that there is, just as you said it, Paul, that's what's being put out there, even in an alleged election, a red herring in the States. I observed there was people there, like 4 years ago, actually physically crying with ecstasy that this man had seemed to allegedly win a Democratic vote, and that there'd be some level of hope. There was boards up there with the words hope. And everybody is stood there, and they're not comprehending the very empowering information with regard to the name of fiction, which is all completely true. If you know how to tackle yourself with a police force which is in your face as a force, they are not and never were and never will be in your face to actually help you. They will use aggressive force to take you to contract inequity, which is what all... There is no such thing as justice. Mm-hmm. It's just business, it's just money. And it's this ridiculous belief in money, in debt, in the electronic numbers that is real, which is what the New World Order wants us to keep thinking is real, because the only thing they've got is two. One is extreme violence, coupled with the genocide that goes with that en masse on a very large scale, of which we're already right in. And two is the fantasy of an electronic one world currency without any cash, which is going to be all of tops 3 to 4 years away.
I actually agree with you. I don't know about the time scale. I think the time scale is how fast we'll fall for it. And I accept I accept completely that it is obviously the pound. The digital currency is because it's digitally created by a digital finger, and we all understand that now. But the study that you've done, and I'm not going to challenge you because I haven't done the depth of study you have. I found it wasn't my area of interest. The language was my area of interest, but not so much the legal language. It was just the language we speak today. But again, this isn't what I'm going to try and share with you tonight. But the one thing I did understand by studying, in the early days of what we call the law, which is, of course, the eagle system in its entirety, the predatory eagle system, where everybody works for the system except you, and you're the only mug that goes into court, and mug being an operative word here. You're the only mug to go into court to promise to tell the truth. The rest are all part of the same gang that are there to fleece you. We all know this.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But when we actually learn that it's always been this way, it's quite uncomfortable, because we learn that we've always been slaves.
Oh, yes.
I don't think in history, recorded in history, there is a time that we can be sure that we were ever free at all, ever.
No, not in my... That's right. When you look back at the history and the longevity of this plan is very disturbing. It's very intimidating to take that on board, swallow it as a red pill, and believe it and know it's true.
You're absolutely right. But we've come to, and they don't scare to tell us in their books that this has been part of a great plan. This has been a master plan to enslave the human race and buy the planet for themselves through the illusion of money. And yes, it's taken them a long time. And yes, a lot of their generation has actually died for the cause. But they are now so damn close to enslaving a planet and its population through the illusion of paper that it's unbelievable how close to the edge of the cliff we are and how dark these times really are.
Wow, that's I have to agree with you there, Paul. You've actually just articulated exactly the way I do feel about it. Now, I know by talking to a lot of people, I was invited to a party recently here, and there were some lovely people there, and a lot of them were awake to a certain degree. But I don't think, because it's all too uncomfortable to realise the depths of this, that they don't want to go into it in too much depth, and they basically come at you and say, well, what are we supposed to do? But those same people are still putting their signature in black pen unconditionally on bits of paper because they haven't bothered to realise that they're giving their energy into the system. They don't know that, and even if they do realise that, we're stuck incredibly because we've been farmed like these animals. That system of equity is still there. You're right, Paul. I mean, I can't pull out a major solution out of my hat, but we are contributing to it on our every day. So it's a very difficult situation that the entirety of mankind have been put into.
Can I ask you, because you and I, I'm talking to my pal Andy here now, you and I, was it about 2 or 3 years ago, we actually came to the conclusion there is no way available for us to get out of this apart from the word no.
Yeah.
There is no other method.
There isn't. No.
Every corner is covered. Everything we can try, they have the answer. Because to ask for justice from a criminal justice system is wishful thinking. I mean, you might as well just pray that you're going to get a judge that knows less than you do. Because that's all you've got. That's the only chance you've got. And if you get a judge that knows less than you do, he'll come back a couple of days later, having taken advice from those above him.
He'll adjourn.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not saying that anybody's doing wrong here. I support every fight from every effort from every corner. Even if I don't actually think it's going to work. If you're prepared to stand up there and say, I'm not having it, I'm behind you. I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't think we should have, 2 or 3 leading voices like we seem to have in this country. England particularly now is, we seem to have centred our focus on 2 or 3 or 4 of what we all know are recognisable names, which I'm not going to say. But I think we need more people standing up. And you're trying to do it, and I'm trying to do it, and the station's trying to do it. It's almost it's frustrating because we can't get up there fast enough to actually shout from the rooftops.
I appreciate that, Paul, and I know that, I feel it, I see it, and a lot of us now, we could almost call ourselves veterans with the depth of knowledge we've gained and the efforts we've made over, it seems to be going on forever, this alleged financial collapse and stuff, But like I said earlier on, every effort is admirable. We have never had the choice to be picky and choosy about what we like and what we don't like, and certainly what we believe and what we don't believe, certainly with regard to geoengineering and chemtrails, whether they exist or not. That's our downfall, to be indifference in the first place, I think. No, there is an element of great emergency about what we can do here, and the only solution I could see would be actually 3. The third one I'm not sure I can say on critical mass, but I'll start with the first 2. And the first one is, of course, to understand what money is and try to figure on some way of bartering with something else other than electronic currency or your bank card at all, because that money's just unlawful and crap, and it's the way they want you in the future, which is tough. Which is difficult, but do that. The other is to, of course, live together in communities of people who can reach beyond their fear and their ego and be able to work alongside you, girls and boys together, young and old, and even that I've experienced as well can be somewhat incredibly difficult because people's egos does shine through.
Yeah, I'm going to try and prize the third from you without you using the words that might incriminate yourself. I realise where you're going here.
Right.
But I agree with you. Actually, the first one is the actual ignorance of the money system, because it's actually very simple, isn't it? But it's so simple that people don't believe it's actually true.
That's right. Yeah.
And the BBC, I mean, I have a recording from BBC Two that was taken, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. And they actually openly tell you exactly how the money system works. It's word for word. I think it's Robert is it Preston? The BBC's Money Boy. Anyway, he openly tells you over a 2-part series exactly how it works. And it confirmed everything that we already know. And that is that it really is made up out of fresh air. And the risk is borne by, well, we now know the risk is offloaded onto, it's through communism, as we know. All profits are shared by private entities, and all losses are socialised. This is one of these stages of communism. And these people are stealing. They've not only stole our futures, but they've stole our children's futures. I mean, they've had their hand in our back pockets all my life, but now they've got their hands in my children's money boxes, and now they've got their hands in my children's money boxes that haven't been bought yet, and I'm getting bloody sick of it.
But people believe in taxpayers' money. They've got this wonderful matrix layer called the taxpayers' money, and then maybe attached to that might be your credit rating and the banks and stuff, as if they're pointing their finger at a moral basis of you being some level of incapable, down-and-out criminal by not being able to have money in the first place, and then, if not, handle it correctly. But as long as those fingers are pointing back at you, they're not pointing to the in total psychopaths at the top, who have arranged all this in the first place. And that's just, if you really need to get beyond those ways of thinking within money. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say now, Paul.
Well, it's okay, because it's such a big subject, so we can never run out of things to talk to. Yeah. But let's move along a little bit, because you're actually, you actually run what I would call, what do you call it actually? You call it a Radio 2012 room on Skype.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to mention the VoIP network, but I've got a radio room there. That's right, and
that's no problem. I mean, that's how I keep in touch with what you're up to. That's why I've invited you on this evening, because I've seen that you've got yourself settled back in. I saw a message where you said, I've got all my equipment unloaded, and I'm getting myself set back up. So I thought I'm going to ask him to come and say hello, because we did speak about 4 months ago, and I did enjoy what you did, and I did immediately sort of resonate with what you were broadcasting. Because I thought I get that, I understand that. But let's move along a little bit, because Skype is great, but it is obviously a spell of spy key, and we know damn well that they're watching and listening and recording everything we do. Yeah. And we've got to be very careful now, because this Telecommunications Act that has actually gone through quietly, this new Telecommunications Act, I can't quite remember the name of it. I did have the news story, but the print's far too small for me to read. And it basically, it does, the wording is quite simple. We will use anything you say and do against you. We will, if we feel we need to, retrospectively apply this to what you've said previously. We will tape, record and monitor everything you're doing. And that's going through right now. And not a word has been said by anybody that I can find.
Well, Paul, that's interesting, because basically that would be, unless you're going to testify in the flesh in a court, then they would have to have, it all harks back onto the name of fiction, the biometrics, the stealing of your DNA in any given police station at any time, your photograph taken, your fingerprints, to assume and presume, at which point you don't actually have to sign anything, but if you do say anything and sign anything because of fear, then you will become that name. So it doesn't matter what evidence they're going to assume and presume that they're going to use against you. The reason why that legislation is passed is purely because it has force and violence behind it, and they have the civil service, the GCHQ, who've just made Skyfall as well, just try and big up that idea.
I'm gonna come back to that a little bit later. I read it.
Oh, right, okay.
I read your blog, yeah.
Oh, good man, yeah.
I'm going to come back to that one a little bit later, but you're absolutely right. I mean,
well, Paul, it's to instill fear. It is, quite remarkably, what you have to ask yourself is, why have we got the internet, electricity flowing through to our houses still anyway today, and the internet, untouched and still working in a fantastic fashion that it is? They can't be that clever that all they can do is, in fact, employ tons of people to sit on seats in GCHQ in Cheltenham or other, and use legislation against you. It's just a turnover of it's the civil, basically. It's all civil. It's all bull. It's all rubbish.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way. I mean, sometimes people who listen to my shows think that I am actually being negative. I'm actually not being negative. I'm actually poking you in the eye.
Yes.
Actually giving you a poke in the eye and the kick up the necessary to say, this isn't just what we should be doing. Every day we should make an effort to improve upon what we were yesterday. Now, I know we live in a world of contracts, and the language that I play with and I understand and have decoded quite successfully for my own benefit, to contract, or the word contract, is to make smaller. If something contracts, it makes smaller. So if you agree to if you agree to contract with somebody and they produce the contract and you're signing their contract, they will have more power than you because they've offered you a deal where they will benefit from your contracting. In other words, you become smaller, they become bigger. But the word works backwards as well because all words are put together like building blocks. And if you contract, you actually act contra. You act in your worst interests.
Okay, good, yes.
This is the fun that I have with the words. And I do it with almost all the words. And a lot of people laugh and say, ha, 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 ha. And I say, well, how many hours you got? Because I can do it with them all.
But you see, that's the point, right? It's funny how the days pass by and the network is closing in, and still you have people who will ridicule you or just laugh or think somehow you're just playing with words and you're making it up completely out of your head, that there's no point of reality. And it's that's the downfall. That's because people aren't taking you seriously. And you're not, you're talking very straight, Paul. It's very good and clear. Unfortunately, very, very true. It's the truth. It's fact-based, you know.
The truth is something you feel, isn't it? You can hear it and you can see it, but the confirmation comes from the emotion that you attach to what you've just seen or felt. Remember, nothing is real unless you can see, touch, taste, feel, and actually have it in your hand. If you can't see, touch, taste, and feel it, somebody else is providing you with the reality that they've done that for you. So believe them,
Right, that's right.
Yeah, your ears tell lies. Because.
But I was thinking though, on the masses. There's clearly still money flowing throughout the UK through, say, I don't know, say the middle classes to upper classes, and they have probably got their babies vaccinated. They're probably paying their mortgages because they can, because they haven't remotely given it any thought about going to the internet and considering the fact that there is entirely no need to be paying a mortgage because it's completely unlawful and maladministrated in the first place. But they don't want to also realise that when they stop paying, then the police will come to their door, and then they're going to have to realise what a court really is. Maybe there's hundreds of thousands of people in the UK who haven't even given a court a second thought. But until it comes to their turn, then they're going to realise that there is no justice there. It's only business, money and equity, and they should have learned what we learned 4 or 5 years ago, because suddenly their family is going to be affected, and it'll be one, in a way, of complete and total coldness. There'll be no way through, no common law, no normalcy, no moral right or wrong. It will be no sovereignty. It'll just be for money. These are the rules that the judges make, based on money and solely on money. They have been for a long time. It's not a matter of corruption, it's just that justice was never there. Personally, Paul, it's just my viewpoint, I don't actually give any credit to male or female judges of any ages, of any level, High Court, Supreme Court, Magistrates Court. They should not be given respect. They're only placed there, even if they don't know what they're doing. They shouldn't be there at all. But they should. But the fact that they're definitely psychopathic in nature, and that there is no way through in a court other than questioning their jurisdiction, then that realism has to come to people. They have to realise that it's not for them to fall back on. And if it still exists, the Crown Courts with the police system in the UK 3-4 years from now, it's going to be even worse. And just to add to that, people may have missed the fact that Theresa May has in fact made a shoot-to-kill policy, not necessarily from the army, military army, because there's no need for the army to be on the streets. There are different factions of the police services, of which will be very readily and easily called upon. They're covered with faces, dressed in black, all armed to the teeth, only with the backing of violent legislation allowing a murder to be killed on the high streets of the UK. That's what they've been moving into since the riots in the UK a while back there, and that's precisely, of course, what they've got to instill violence.
I know where we're going. I know. I mean, if you read just 2 or 3 books, the 2 that we most notably always talk about are 1984 and Brave New World, or Brave New World Revisited. they are as close as you need to read. One is 80 years old, one is 64 years old, or whatever it is.
Right.
You know, and we have already on the streets here in the UK quietly amassing. Their numbers now are higher than the regular army that we have in this country. We have Homeland Security quietly putting themselves together. Most people know them as G4S. We call them as G-Force here, don't we?
Right.
Yeah. We have Homeland Security quietly just amassing the brain-dead, minimum wage psychopaths who will eventually put their hands on you, who will eventually follow orders without question for bonuses and pats on the head.
That's just answered the question I was going to ask. A lot of people listening in to what we've just been talking about there will say, and I was one of these people that said that, if you're not doing anything wrong, though, you've nothing to worry about. You
dear.
answered that my question before I asked it, really. That we have got something to worry about.
Got something to worry
we
about.
have, as you say, when they're dressed all in black, even the faces are covered now. Even all you can see is their eyes, and they're carrying a gun.
I know. Well,
and they happen to be guys as well. You know, it's too bad, but because of the Fabian agenda from '97, basically full on, just as the day Tony Blair arrives at the door in '97 in the UK, quite a considerable amount of those men are not family men in UK with children. They happen to be from Eastern Europe, and they are very affected young men who have been sought out, like you said, Paul, through the security, you know, through the lower end security jobs that pay £10 an hour, say Tesco's, quite specifically on purpose. I've met some in Ireland, and I know that they're here in the UK, and it doesn't really matter because their faces will be covered. There'll be no such sovereignty, law, legislation, common law, or collar numbers to get retribution or compensation from, because they're looking to hurt you.
It is becoming very unnerving times. I mean, I'm sat here, and you're here, and Andy's here, and everybody else is here, and we now know that they have clearly told us, you make one mistake online, you make one allegation that you can't back up, you claim a fact, and we find it's false. We're going to check your bank account, check your status, and if you've got something worth taking, we're coming for you. Because this Napoleonic law, which is guilty unless you can afford to prove yourself innocent. Now, this is where we're going. Guilty unless you can afford to prove yourself bloody innocent.
Well, it's very handy to turn over somewhat of 200 years worth of UK legislation with the bat of an eyelid in, I think it was 99, Corpus Juris over habeas corpus, the EU executive. That's right. And that remains today, you know, and as long as it pumps money for the judges, that's all they'll care about. And as long as people actually consider their human rights and not their God-given unalienable rights, then there's loads of work and business to be made in courts with solicitors, lawyers and judges. But if you don't know that violence is the only thing... I just recently, Paul, had an experience down in Devon and Cornwall where... there was an accusation made against where I was dwelling, completely out of the blue and foundless and baseless. So I let them... I didn't open the door. I did make the mistake of recognising them, but I had a fancy that they'd probably be looking to get into the property anyway. So they did, but that was only after about an hour's worth of them pondering around and then gathering up about 4 police cars and then basically breaking into the back door with a big red, you know, door breaker. Then getting approached by a man dressed in black, told me to show me his hands with a big steel extended pole. He looked more frightened than I was. Then he put my arms behind my back and then cuffed me. So there was like just ream loads of police for one, you know, wasted. It's because taxpayers' money doesn't exist, because money is always, the job is there, common purpose. It doesn't matter about how many police, if they want to get a job done, it seems, in Devon and Cornwall, they will use extreme force and violence to do so. Unfortunately for them, though, I didn't actually cooperate. They seemed to be rather upset that I wasn't cooperating, in that I wasn't angry, I wasn't afraid, I wasn't speaking, and I wasn't writing anything. So that left them quite with nowhere to go, really. So they did a strip search of me, and which was new, but it was just blokes anyway around me, and they were like fingering my clothing as if I had some kind of, I don't know, bomb or some needles in it. And then I just sat there quietly in the cell, and then basically was taken to an interrogation where I didn't actually speak, except for the fact that I said no when she said, "Do you understand?" And so I did interlink with their legalese, and then eventually didn't sign anything. So after about 4 hours, I was brought to the front desk by a young sergeant who was only about 26 years old, a big old beefed up guy, very angry. And he said, "No charges, I'll let you go." And he was trying to hand me some papers. So there I said, "Well, no, that's not my property, that's yours." And because I had actually been very careful to keep my mouth shut, because if he was opening the gate to me, these are very dangerous psychopathic people, so you best just say nothing. Don't tell them your position. Just know yourself what contracting is. So upon saying that I wasn't going to be, that was his property, not mine, that was the wonderful feeling of the one-overmanship, because he just said, "Get him out of here, get him out of my police station," like I'd intruded into their world.
Well, congratulations and well done to you.
Well done, yeah.
I have learned you just don't talk to them. You just don't.
No.
Just do not communicate at all. Completely refuse.
Yeah.
If you could possibly record everything they're doing, crack on and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
they will use it. You're testifying every time you open your mouth.
I know.
They will use it against you. It's quite remarkable. Even though if it's not recorded or down in writing, they will use that against you in their world. That's the presumption, assumption. To them, they think that's perfectly normal and acceptable.
Well, to them, you're already a criminal. They just have to work out how to catch you. I mean, look at the Hillsborough carry-on. I mean, look at the amount of police that are now indicted for going along with what they bloody well knew was a lie. I mean, those police should be ashamed of their bloody selves.
I did when I was getting robbed of my DNA, Paul, in the little photographic room there, where they do tell you they can use, in inverted commas, reasonable force to force your hand down to get your fingerprints and cross-reference you on their database, which is what it's all about, data gathering. I asked a couple of the policewomen there and the policeman, a big, tall guy. I said, "Do you guys have criminal records?" And they beamed up. They said, "Oh, no, of course not. We couldn't hold the job if we had criminal records." I gladly said to him, "Well, I've got a whole database on my computer of police who are actively involved in criminal activity, who have criminal records. Because as it turns out, on the FTMOL website, there is such a database that's been correctly put together. There's so much of it about." Because they try to act they can legally lie to you and act squeaky clean, which there is nothing further from the truth. What's the name of that big Serco as well? Yeah. So I asked to see a doctor, got that one as well out of the way. That was through learning from the internet, really. It's not, everything is an experience, and you can only handle it if you remain cool and know maybe in advance of how you can act and what not to say or what to do and everything. It's not pleasant. And you will probably be on your own. You won't have a group of gang with you to help you out in this situation. They'll take you one by one. But Serco, of course. So the Serco doctor came in. So I sort of whimpered a little bit about the big bruising on my wrist with the chains, the cuffs that they'd made. And then she said, "Is there anything else?" I said, "No, that was it, thanks." So I cut that free of any. We had a meeting of minds, and clearly I wasn't insane. As well there, but I hadn't mentioned anything about sovereignty or free men or anything like that. I was just acting both free man and sovereign. But
well, you're absolutely right. You are right. I mean, this system, it only has violence. It only has the invisible gun to the head. And if you upset them, you will soon realise that the slave you are is the slave you always were. Mm. You will soon realise you are on your own, and you better learn how to defend yourself, because in this game, if you can't defend yourself, you're going to get scored against. Let's move along a little bit. I'm on time constraints. I've got 2 hours, and I want to fill them full of information that we can share and use and benefit from sharing. Now, let's move on to Mr. Alex Jones. Now, this is a character that almost seems taboo in many radio stations. I actually hardly hear anybody talking about him, and when they do talk about him, they actually use the same meme all the time. So I wonder if I could ask you your opinion of the one and only Mr. Alex Jones.
Are you talking to me, Paul, or Andy there?
I'm talking to you.
Okay. Basically, just to let the CMR listeners know and everyone else on a further field that Alex Jones woke me up to 9/11 being an inside job. That was that I was in a place in northern UK, let's say, and I was listening in on an FM radio station out of Liverpool, and it was before they really tinkered with the FM stations after midnight, and it was really open speak on this one particular station out of Liverpool, and he was either in the UK or he'd made a link up to this station, which was rare. I can't remember the name of the station now, and it was I wasn't aware of much really at that point in time. This was already 6 or 7 years ago now, and that was the first time I ever heard his voice. I didn't go to the internet, didn't hear him there or anything. So I woke up. It was absolutely exhilarating hearing his passion talking about 9/11 being an inside job. And I took notes, Infowars.com, etc. Then went to the internet and sort of started from his website, going wider afield from that as well, looking into him and listening to him on a daily basis, I must say, as well. Now, I think I know why you're trying to raise the question, Paul, is that, he's come in on, the more you stick your neck out, one does have to ask the question as well, if he's got such a great setup with Genesis Communications Network, GCN network, that's the envy of everybody to have such great servers, powerful servers, TV bits and pieces, and a solid network and so many researchers, to do your work for you. And he's been in the business upwards of 17 years doing that very same thing. Prior to that, I must say, Bill Cooper. Look up William Cooper.
Oh, no, I got him. I love him.
Me too.
I love him. He actually speaks from the heart. And if you're listening to him, he's talking to you. And if he's criticising you, he's talking to you. And if there's a problem, he means you are the problem. And I love it.
Yeah. No, he's. I think the hour of our time, Paul. You probably know yourself.
Fantastic. The best hour on radio.
Yeah, well, sadly he was murdered as well, because murder is what they've got up their sleeve. That's all they've got. They do it to everybody, like JFK and Bill Cooper. Anyway, but getting back to Bill Hicks, someone said that Alex Jones was Bill Hicks. I think that's a bit of a reach. Was reincarnated. They're both from Texas, and they do actually look alike, but and they're both clearly talented. But
it does seem Texas is the fighting state of the US in many ways, because that's where American Freedom Radio is based, and GCN is based there, and
that's right.
I think who's the other guy? Jack Blood. He's based there, and it does seem to be the centre of resistance. So whether there's some conspiracy there, I'm not going to even entertain it. But what I was trying to get over about Alex is that I think people who criticise Alex are quite welcome to do so. I don't do that, because the man himself is not somebody that I really are interested in. I'm interested in the information he puts out, and the information he puts out. He really does make every attempt to be the leading reporter on what is going on. And after quite a long time of listening, I am finding it difficult to prove him wrong on many occasions. And when he does make a mistake, it's a mistake that you and I could have made with the information we have available at the time. Yeah,
I agree, Paul. I felt that as well. And really, it's... I think I told you, every time I turn him on in the first 3 minutes, I hear his earnesty in his work. There's no ego there. Others have accused him of, they've met him and stuff, but I personally, he's just being brutally honest, I think. It's just maybe some elements of what he surely would be aware of, but isn't talking about. Now, that's either because it's not his strong suit, or because it suits him not to do so, because it might be a safer position for him to take.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this, and we can't back it up. I know what you're saying. There are some things that he doesn't cover. He does, I've heard him say on more than one occasion, that the Zionists don't give them all the credit. It's not just down to them. They might be sat, be a higher level than some of the other groups. But to give it all to the Zionists is perhaps to be give them too much. This is a global conspiracy.
Yeah.
This is bigger than just one little group of maybe Jewish people. You don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. I'm understanding that. It's too much. It's going to take hundreds and thousands of connections around the world. This is a global conspiracy. And yes, we all do believe that Israel is going to get it again in the neck at some point in the future. So if we think that's where the Zionists are, then we'll also think they've been eliminated. So I think we're being played a little bit here. I think the system is much smarter than us, and the only gift I've given myself is that every day I realise how much I really don't know. And that is my challenge, is to try and fill that gap with something I need to know. Now, let's move along then, because we've covered AJ. I've not criticised him. I listen to the information, and do you know what? I make my own mind up. I actually decide for my goddamn self.
Yeah.
It's got me this far, and I'm still free to some extent, and my business is still not being... I'm not being bothered by the licorice all sort colouring, wearing illusory fancy dress numbskulls that think they've got some power over me.
Yeah.
Let's move on then. Let's move on to that blog you wrote about Skyfall.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm glad you did read it then.
Yeah, I have not seen the film, but I feel I've seen some of it by what you wrote. Come on, give us a breakdown. We got about 6.
I just want to tell people, and this is important. I've been. Paul, given what you said about people listening in at DCHQ, I've actually been looking for that since last summer, and there's been loads of virus false torrents with Skyfall prematurely, because I didn't realise nobody could get their hands on the can prior to it actually going out to the cinema on this occasion, as in downloading illegal copies from the internet, which is, of course, what I do, okay? And... And this time I managed to get surely the world's totally worst in-theatre cam copy. Someone's got a camera, they put up in the theatre, probably at the GCHQ-funded opening in London viewing of the movie, and then put it up online. So I downloaded that, but it was just watchable enough, It was terrible copy. But it was the text, it was the general idea. I can afford to go and pay, I suppose, to a local cinema here £8 or £10 for your programming, but I was able then to get up ahead of time, make my summation basically of it, and it wasn't. Talking about Bond, I mean, when I was 14, I liked Live and Let Die and The Spy Who Loved Me, two of the best Bond movies for what they are. At the time, I didn't realise I was getting completely tricked and conned. I didn't know what it was about. I fancied being Bond myself, because that's how it put itself across to me as a child, of course. But I didn't realise that Bond relates to the sovereign Bond, the birth certificate, and James being the King James Bible. The whole Admiralty scenario is right there in front of your face, and that's so deep now. Just go ahead there and just bring in CI5, MI5, big it up, just qualify. They're trying to qualify the false war on terror right in your face and glamorise it. Anyway, there was... Do you want to ask me a question, Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say, rather than going, because we've only got about 4 minutes left together, but this isn't the last time I'm going to ask you to join us, because you are well versed on all subjects.
Thanks.
Now, again, I seem to have moved quite quickly, but to get these 2 interviews in, I want to do tonight. It does feel a bit chop and change. Okay. Now, you are in constant conversations with radio stations around the world, more so in America, but you may well be able to fill in with Vinny in Australia and Sonia in Canada and places like that.
Yeah.
And are you finding these radio stations coming to the conclusion that perhaps working together with our stronger presenters is the way forward, or are they still all competing for what is the same audience?
Oh, that's a good question. Holy wow. God, that's a good question. There are some absolutely superbly talented people out there, Paul. It's so exciting. It's great. Really good. And by the way, Oracle and Orion are two other stations worldwide, I think out of the States, that people should listen to as well. But some of them, like possibly American Freedom Radio and like possibly Vincent, who I just love to bits, but Vincent Eastwood, that is. Mm-hmm. He talks to anybody about anything. It's very general, all far out new agey stuff, and I mean that's entertainment. That's not really deeply informative. I don't know, is the way people may consider what they're listening to. Maybe it's too much choice, but yeah, I think that's a very good, a very good.
Well, yeah, I was going to follow it up with, just getting towards a solutions finish here. I mean, it is the right thing for us all to be shouting so the noise becomes deafening.
Yeah.
Or is the right thing for us to perhaps support those that are better at doing it than others, or I know we all want to make a difference in this world, but like every train, there's only one driver and there's a whole crew that supply the steam that the engine needs. I wonder if we can perhaps understand that it's not the host that is the star, as it were. It's the host that can get the most out of the information that we have. And I wish I could do that, and I know I can't. I'm almost actually hoping that somebody will come along and tap me on the shoulder and say, do you know what, lad, you've done all right, but it's about time, let me have a go at that seat. And I quite enjoy moving along and helping somebody else, and it's not that... Yeah, I'm not hoping that...
Well, you're lovely. Listen, there is a radio host, he's on American Freedom Radio, it's someone else, but they're clearly very confident and very good at what they do because they do it so often, but it's not easy. Doing this hosting and knowing what you're talking about is not easy. Humility is a very good quality to have. No, don't doubt yourself, Paul. It all matters. Every element of it matters. It all does. It's all important, and it does take a lot of hard work, volunteering your time if you're away from your family or something, trying to produce something together and find the facts. And anyway, being leaderless as well is important. We're all equal here. We're all equal.
Yeah. Yeah, we're equal but we're not equal on everything. I mean, we've got to understand that this equality doesn't actually come to socialism. It comes to personal relationships. Mm-hmm. Socialism can get confused in there. Personal relationships, of course, we're all equal, but not to a level of socialism. Anyway, it is 10:05, and I have to say, Andy Odin Wild Hunt, it has been an absolute pleasure to have your company this evening. It really has.
Thank you so much.
I wish I'd scheduled you for the whole show.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Now can we expect you to see you back on the air in the future? Do you think you're going to get back in the saddle?
Yes. I mean, I would like to, but it's just a matter of my own personal... I'm in a temporary position at the moment. It's much, much better than I had before. But it's nice of you to ask. I think Paul has always got the gate open for me on Critical Mass Radio. I've really no doubt about that. And I really appreciate that because I really like Critical Mass Radio. And by the way, everybody listening, 24th of November, Manchester, be there, be square. Yeah, but I don't know. Hard to say right now. But Paul, please contact me anytime you feel free, anytime you want to.
Take care and keep up with the good work, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye, Andy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Well, there we are then. What a lovely guest. Right, my thanks to Andy Odin Wild Hunt. That's a mouthful, isn't it? That's a mouthful. What a super guest.
Uh-huh.
Confident, every subject, ploughed through, and I love it. So, what did you? I mean, you sort of we're trying to get in on the Skyfall bit, but we left it too late. We're out of time as usual.
Well, we run out of time. No, I just wonder. The first time I heard it, the name Skyfall, I thought Skyfall. Where have I heard Skyfall before? And I remember going back to being a kid. And the first week was Chicken Licking, the story. Go
on, expand on that a little bit, because I'm not quite with you on this one yet.
It was the story of Chicken Licking. He was a little chicken in the farmyard. And he went round asking all the other farm animals if the sky were going to fall in.
Right.
And I can't remember how the story ended, but it was like a fable. No, and all the other animals were saying, "No, you're stupid. No, go away. I'm far too. I've got to eat this. Oh, I've got to eat these oats before. Never mind."
But I can see the analogy you're making here.
Yeah.
That we're running around telling people that it's not going to last forever. This reality, it's coming to an end. And people say, "No."
Just let me finish my oats off.
I mean, there's only so many times that your three-piece sweet centre can have its closing down sale, isn't there? They all closing last offers.
JLS.
Never to be repeated.
JLS Sunday.
JLS, listen to you. DFS, you nuts. JLS. One bloody beer and you're away.
Well,
we've got. A very, very good evening to you, sir. I'd like to welcome to the show our first ever visit with Mr. James Corbett. Good evening to you, sir.
Well, thank you for having me on the program. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure to have you join us. Now then, we're speaking live as we are today, and you're in Japan, and I'm sat in the middle of the UK in North Yorkshire. Couldn't be more central to the UK. If you can imagine the UK, put a dot in the middle, and that's where I am today. Tell us, because Japan is Japan and Fukushima. This is something that has fallen out of the mainstream media. It really isn't being covered anymore by the alternative media to so much extent, because the news arrives so quickly that what's gone is gone and what's coming we keep preparing for. But Fukushima, I think, needs to be brought back and kept in the front line as to what we should be looking at.
I think so too, but unfortunately I think we've got the worst of both worlds when it comes to media coverage of Fukushima. You have the mainstream media that's pretending that it doesn't exist anymore and that everything's tickety-boo, and you have the alternative media, which unfortunately tends to pick up and run with some of the most, I suppose outrageous headlines, some of which turn out to be true, some of which turn out to be complete hoaxes, and I don't see a lot of discernment on either side. So I feel like I'm caught in the middle of trying to sort through the morass of information about Fukushima that continues to come out, because of course last December it was declared that the site was in cold shutdown, meaning that the temperatures were under 100 degrees. There wasn't any possibility of water boiling away anymore from the reactors, so that at the very least the situation was quote unquote under control, and that was the cue to the mainstream media to back off the issue and basically go back to sleep. The alternative media has kept the light, I suppose, on Fukushima to a certain extent, although certainly we don't see as much inquiry into it as we used to. But unfortunately, we see from time to time just really poor hoax-type stories getting spread virally online. And I was privy to that a couple of weeks ago as I was sitting here working on the website one night, and I ended up getting about a dozen emails over the course of 1 hour about this hoax story that started to go viral about basically a fire that had broken out at Fukushima and reactors were exploding and the world was going to end in 20 minutes or something along those lines. And I went to check it out and I couldn't corroborate it in any way. It was from some unsourced, unnamed place that some guy who claimed to live in the area and was saying that the radiation readings were off the charts. Every possible way that I could think of to verify it was showing that there was nothing unusual happening at the site, and eventually that story was shown to be a hoax, but not until after many thousands of people had read that story, I'm sure. And unfortunately, that story itself covered up a very real problem that at the exact same time was being revealed. TEPCO had to admit that they were doctoring photos and hiding information showing a crack in the foundation of Unit 4, the fourth reactor there at the Fukushima Daiichi plant, that was continuing to leak radioactive water directly into the ocean. So we know that the leaks are still going on, cracks and other such horrible nightmare-type scenarios are still being found, but again, unfortunately, because some people get carried away and run with stories that just sound, I guess, sensationalistic, it means that, unfortunately, not a lot of accurate information is getting out there about it. So it is a very difficult situation to stay informed about.
Yeah, I'm actually your last broadcast. I was just watching the broadcast actually before we got in contact, and you are in many ways showing that these hoax stories are really causing so much trouble and have been for a long time. And when we can just use the word disinformation and assume that the conspiracy continues and it must be somebody at the government doing it, but that's generally not true, is it? Generally, it's just people who are picking up outlandish conspiracies and just broadcasting them like they were true, and that's what you've been concentrating on your show today.
That's exactly right, and it is an unfortunate aspect of the alternative media because we can get into a sort of reflex reaction where if it's coming from the mainstream, it must be a lie. If it's coming from the alternative, it must be true, and of course that's not always the case. And I think you're right. I mean, 99.9% of the people out there are well-meaning people who really are concerned about these issues and want to share truthful information, and maybe just don't have the discernment or the abilities to sort of source and vet the information as it's coming in, so they'll spread it before they really look into it. And that is much to our detriment because, once again, if we're part of something that would even want to don the mantle of the truth movement or whatever you want to call it, if we're not at least adhering to the truth, then what is this? What's it all about? So it is a tightrope to walk because obviously we have to be skeptical of what's coming from the mainstream, but I think we all should also be skeptical of what's coming from the alternative media. And skepticism doesn't mean that we just reject everything or we point accusatory fingers. It means that we unfortunately, there's no shortcut to it. We have to do the homework and the legwork groundwork to find out each story as it comes in, vet it, see if you can corroborate it from other sources, and what information you can find out for yourself about it. Don't just take someone's word for it. So that's what I try to stress to my audience.
And that's actually why I've invited you on the show today, because it is very, very important to find news sources that really are doing the work that perhaps others don't have time to do. And I include myself in that. I actually don't have time to do all the work that you do. So I really do appreciate what it is that you share. And you admit when you make mistakes. And that's all good, because if we don't admit we make mistakes, we start to think that we can never be wrong. And Facebook is a terrible place for revealing these hoaxes or perpetrating these ongoing stories that may or may not be true. When I first joined Facebook, I can remember thinking that I'm going to actually use this as a news source. So I'm going to try and friend people who are sharing valuable news sources. And it's good and bad in equal measure.
Unfortunately so, and I guess it's like anything else in life. I mean, we have to be wary about the information we take on board and how we spread it to others, which might be the most important part of that, because again, viral stories are just links in a chain, and we are part of that link when we decide to share a story with someone else. So at the very least, we should think twice before just hitting that retweet button or whatever it may be in this digital world. Before sharing this type of information, we should at least have a basis for why we say what we say. And that's really, I think, the most important part of my podcast and radio broadcast is not myself or my opinions or my views. It's the fact that I always try to include the links back to the sources that I'm using so that people can, at the very least, put together the cookie crumbs that make up the rabbit trail, I suppose, going down the hole that I've gone down, and they can decide for themselves whether or not I'm justified in the conclusions I've come to.
And I'm very grateful for you doing that work, because it does help me enormously. Now then, we only have a short time. So hopefully it won't sound a little bit. I'd like to change the subject, but if I can, I will. Let's focus. Let's change directions completely from one side of the world to the other side of the world. Let's focus on the greatest show on earth and the conclusion that is another four more years of Mr. Obama.
Indeed. Well, what is there to say about this? As a radio host, as a podcaster, as someone who is often asked about these subjects, I feel like I should have something more insightful to say other than shrugging my shoulders and saying more of the same. But it's really the point that I've arrived at. And anyone who's been listening to my broadcasts over I guess almost 6 years now that I've been doing it, 5.5 years that I've been doing this, will have seen that I've really gone on my own political journey and transformation and understanding of what politics is and how we should be situating ourselves in that sphere. So for myself, I can almost track it over the course of the various American elections over the past several years, from the 2006 midterm elections to the 2008 Obama Hope and Change election to this election. I've really changed quite a bit. And I think the first indication that I had that the political world, as we've been fed it all our lives, is a complete hoax was the 2006 midterm election in the Congress and the Senate, which saw the Democrats come into power during in the Senate and the House during the Bush administration, and everyone was thinking, oh well, now it's going to begin. They're going to start all the inquiries and the joint hearings, and there's going to be impeachment proceedings, and they're going to be looking into the torture and closing Guantanamo and all of the things that the Democrats were promising, every single one of which failed to come to fruition. And that was really my first, I suppose, look behind the scenes into what's really happening. I think at that time believed there would be some sort of actual change in policy. And once I saw that seamless transfer, I started to become a lot more skeptical about what was happening. And in 2008, I knew that the Obama Hope and Change line was just going to be more of the same with a different face, but the same policies. And that's exactly what turned out. In fact, in many ways, Obama was just Bush on steroids. So in 2012, I must admit, I've pretty much shed my statist beliefs. I can't really get behind the political paradigm anymore or worry about what politicians are promising. I think it's all just various forms of slavery, mental slavery, and in financial slavery when we talk about tax servitude. And I think the real political paradigm is what people can and are in many ways affecting in their own community, and the types of choices and decisions we make on a day-to-day basis, the people we interact with, the people we spend our time with, the things we spend our time doing, and the things that we spend our money on. It's the real vote that we make each and every day, and that's much more important than any political election scam fraud that's being perpetrated on the people in these 4-year circus sideshows.
Absolutely agreed entirely. It is our decisions that affect what happens to us. And when you actually understand that, you realize that, yeah, I am invited to vote for this corrupt system. Yes, I am forced to use their counterfeit currency and cannot counterfeit any of my own. Once you understand that this is just a fight between management teams for who sits in first class, but these things pale into insignificance eventually when you realize that it's still down to me. I must start speaking out my truth, and hopefully I'll attract other people. And when enough people realize that this is really a scam as opposed to you just think it is, that's how things could change.
Well, speaking of critical mass, yes, exactly. I mean, I think that's very much the way that I look at it now, and I almost wonder how I never saw the world quite in this way before, but I guess that is the idea of the paradigm shift. You just suddenly understand what the world and your place in it in a profoundly different way, and it makes a lot more sense to me now that certainly we do affect what we can on our day-to-day lives, and absolutely all sorts of crazy things are happening at the geopolitical level and in terms of international finance, but that's not something that you or I have any direct effect over. We don't have our hands on the levers of power, and instead of trying to jockey and wrestle into and hoping that we can vote in someone who can get their hands on the levers of power that will use that power in the right way, I think that's just really the wrong way to go about it. Rather, instead, we have to concentrate on what forms of power do they not want us to have. And I see that in all sorts of different ways, from local community gardens or buying local produced foods from local organic farmers, to starting alternative currencies, to starting even just the local sort of meet and greets or news sharing circles or whatever it is among friends who can pass on information about what's going on. I think there's all sorts of ways that the technology we have at our fingertips now can really enable us to start profoundly detaching ourselves from the system that we've relied on, this international, global, financial, corporate slave structure that's constructed around us. And we really have in our fingertips now the ability to use that self-same technology that's part of that web to actually get out of the web, to start constructing communities that actually matter. And to my mind, that's where the real political struggle really lies.
It does. Your world is not the world. Your world is the world that you live in. And if you count up how many people love you and you love, that's the world that you have to start to change. And that world hopefully will grow as the changes come along. Now, let's continue with the Anglo-American empire that exists. And this project for a new American century, which includes America just basically taking control of everything. Now, we can read both sides of the paradigm here. America is designed to fall, and China is designed to rise in superiority? Or are we reading it wrong, and is America prepared to go to all lengths to maintain power, including World War III?
An excellent question, and there's a lot riding on that, isn't there? I wish I knew the answer to that, but all I can do is stand on the outside of that and look and guess at what's underneath, just like everyone else, and try to piece the pieces of this puzzle together as best as I can. And it's absolutely true that there has been a concerted and I think very conscious effort to build China up as the industrial engine of the New World Order, as Soros has called it on numerous occasions. The heart of the New World Order, the engine of the New World Order is China. And it's been built up that way for decades. And that goes back to the ties that Rockefeller and Kissinger were forging with the Chinese leadership as far back as the early 1970s, before Nixon even went there and normalized relations between the U.S. and China. And of course, we've just seen the offshoring of jobs there and the building up of the Chinese economy. So I think there's been a definite and demonstrable effort to build China up. But it's a question of, is this the global would-be elite trying to build up China so that they can then transfer their money, wealth, and holdings there? Obviously, they don't have any particular allegiance to America as a country, or to the UK, or to any other of the nation states. They're just a sort of parasitic elite class that's happy to coast along wherever power is. So are they planning on abandoning that and actually riding that Chinese wave, or is it a setup of China? Do the Chinese leadership truly want to go along with this, or are they contemplating the stab in the back and to trying to actually use the economic and geopolitical power that they have accrued now is the type of squabbling that we see over Syria between the NATO bloc and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization bloc of China and Russia and their allies. Is that a genuine power struggle, or is that just more of the sideshow politics that we're treated to? Again, a lot of very important questions, and again, I'm not sure I have a definitive answer to it, but I can imagine that the people at the very apex of the Western Anglo-American empire, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and Kissingers and the Bilderberg steering committee members and all of those are not going to give up their power very easily. So I'm sure they have all sorts of contingencies. But again, it's all we can do is try to piece together what pieces of information come out from those types of sources and try to read the tea leaves, as it were, as to what's coming.
It is an amazing. I mean, reality is much more. It is. You couldn't write this stuff because people wouldn't believe it, would they? They actually wouldn't believe it. I mean, what I see happening in the East, from my perspective, and it's not an in-depth perspective, but I do my best, and that is that the East is being shaken up because it's time for a regime change, a strengthening of control by what empire still exists, and obviously control of the resources. But they never do something just for one reason or two reasons. It all fits in synchronicity with what the plan overall is. And amazingly, they're using the shake-up of the East to enslave the West. Because it's Al-Qaeda. Is Al-Qaeda the good guy or the bad guy? Well, just pick up the mainstream media and you'll realise that you can't work it out because they're both. You know, the UK is supporting Al-Qaeda, but taking away our rights in defence of Al-Qaeda. And because that won't sit comfortably in the general public's heads, they just assume that these guys at the top know what they're doing. And the truth is they do. It's scary.
It genuinely is, and it's amazing to me. It's so amazing that anyone can believe this system, that doesn't question the system. It absolutely boggles my mind that people go along with this just blatant contradiction, and I don't understand how people can do it, and yet they do. And it's exactly like, I hate to go back to it because everyone always does, but you can't help escape from it. And Orwell's 1984, where he was coming up with concepts like doublethink, which when you read about it sounds just like science fiction fantasy, but when you actually see it in real life and you see them proclaiming that Al-Qaeda is the enemy, and then all of a sudden Al-Qaeda is our friend and they've always been our friend, it's so bizarre, and it's genuinely creepy to see people going along with that. And I think we just have to understand that this is a part of human nature, that a certain percentage of the population will be willing to go along with whatever power the people in power say, just so long as, you know, the cheeseburgers and beer keep flowing, and that'll be enough to really satisfy a lot of people into just not questioning the system.
It does seem that way. Now, again, I'm jumping subjects because I know we only have a short time with you this morning. So it seems like I'm flitting around. It's because I am. Now, Europe, the UK, America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, those countries primarily, and some smaller ones, those countries are being subjected to the carbon tax, global warming, climate change, GMO, poisoning. Now, those countries in particularly are being subjected and taxed for those reasons that I previously mentioned. Why just us?
That's a good question. I think there has to be a certain canary in the coal mine, and there are. I think there are certain populations that are more pliable to this type of reasoning, and there's certainly been a concerted effort to propagandize to those populations for a very long time on these types of matters, and one can see that there is certainly I guess they need a jewel in the crown to go ahead with the implementation on a wider scale. So if you can get a number of countries to soften up on these issues and to go along with them, then it's easier to convince some of the other more obstinate countries. So one can imagine, for example, I mean, carbon taxes are pretty far from anything that's going to be implementable in the American political paradigm, but it's already happened in Australia, and it's starting to happen elsewhere. So one can see that there are just different issues that play better with different electorates. And for whatever reason, I mean, you get things like the TSA manifesting in America and the ridiculous border controls that they have, which then bleed out to other countries. You have the surveillance society, of course, in the UK. You have different aspects of the agenda playing out in different parts of the globe, and I think that's just to do with historical contingencies and what populations have been softened up with what propaganda.
It's what we'll put up with. I realise that. I think there is an old saying, isn't there? The amount of tyranny you'll get is the amount that you actually put up with. And here in the UK, I can actually add to that, James, that we do have carbon tax here in the UK, but it's actually disguised as CCL, and it's on our energy bills. Now, I'm not sure if it's on domestic energy bills, but I do know it's on business bills. And it's Climate Change Levy, CCL. It hides in the bottom lines of your billing. And I think it's at 5%. It won't stay at 5%, of course, but it has started here in the UK, Climate Change Levy. So I think, yes, you're absolutely right. It is. It's an effort to well, we're going to one global plan. We know that. Everything is going to be made to be the same. All rules will apply to all countries. But they just take their time. In fact, sometimes I think, I wish they'd hurry up so they can prove what I've been saying, so I can say, look, I told you. But they just don't go quite quick enough, do they?
Well, that's, of course, part of the whole implementation of this, and that's the idea behind Fabian socialism, for example, the idea that if you wanted to transform a society all at once, everyone would be aware of it and they'd all rebel. But if you do it little by little, piece by piece, over the course of a generation or two, people probably won't even notice. They'll just start to think that's normal, that's reality. And it boggles my mind to think, for example, there's a generation growing up right now that never knew a time before 9/11 and the police state and the war on terror and all of the things that we've seen come along in the wake of that incident. And that's particularly scary because that's a generation that's never even understood that what's happening right now isn't normal and the world doesn't have to be like this. And unfortunately, it's very true. What you can do to train the next generation will affect the future of the world. So I think it's important to have alternative voices continuing to broadcast the truth about things like this, so that people at least know that there are people out there who resist this and will not give in to this type of conditioning.
Well, I think the internet is our chance, isn't it? They had to be able to really plug us into what will be the matrix. They had to give us the internet. And it's a double-edged sword, of course. It can be used for good or for evil. And we're trying to use it for good. But we're battling against a giant called the mainstream media that controls 100% of what people see and hear and therefore believe. And we are just a small voice. But the encouraging thing is that the connections we're making today have been remade over the world by hundreds and thousands of people. And I believe that this is our chance. And never mind 3 or 4 big stations. Let's have 300 or 400,000 stations, all broadcasting the same message. Because as I listen to others and do my own study, I find that we're all, in many ways, coming to the same conclusion, that it's down to us, how we act, how we spend our money, what we eat, who we associate with, and the choices we make. And I find that everybody is starting to get to that point. And a lot of people are saying, if you're still arguing with others, you're not there yet. You know you've made a real step forward when you don't have an argument with others. That's how it seems for me, anyway.
I think you're exactly right. It reminds me of those time-lapse videos you can see of clouds going overhead or flowers opening or that type of thing, where you can see a process that takes a long time happening in just a few seconds. I imagine if you could step back from human society and fast-forward years as if they were seconds and take a look over the past half-century, I mean, the transformations in society would be just breathtaking, just remarkable. And can you imagine what it's going to be like 10, 20, 30 years from now? It's not necessarily going to play out for the best, but it certainly could, and that's the potential, I think, of the moment we're living in. I think we are in times where more will happen in the space of a few months than previously happened in decades. And that's obviously enabled through these types of technologies and connections. I am literally sitting here in my living room in Japan, talking to you in the UK, broadcasting to people all over the world who might be listening to this conversation. It's just insane to think about, and something that even 10 years ago would have boggled my mind to even contemplate. So the realities are presenting themselves that weren't even conceivable to people like myself, at any rate, just a few short years ago, and that will only increase. And it's incumbent on us, while we have these technologies available, to be using them to the utmost, to try to do something with this, rather than just accepting things passively. And that, I think, is one of the great things about the internet. It is a medium that allows us to basically broadcast and to become broadcasters, to become editors, to become more actively involved in the conversation very easily by even just starting a Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is. You start to become a node in what's becoming a much larger network of people who are discovering each other, who are informing each other, and who are growing into a real force in society. And I think that can be for the good. It can, of course, also be for the bad, and it's up to us what we make of it, really.
I find this time to be the most exciting time I have ever lived in. It's not that I'm enjoying it, but I find it invigorating. I'm enthusiastic. I actually never have a moment in the day where I say I'm bored. I actually can't wait for the next book that I've just ordered to arrive so I can rattle through it. I love this time. I just wish it was. I wish it wasn't what it was, but that doesn't matter. It is what it is. And I see this, and maybe reading the books that I have, it would appear that this challenge has always existed. 2,000 plus years ago, we can read the same frustrations by the philosophers of the time to get people to see reality, to present the present, to give them a present. And the present we want to give them is the eyes to see the present. You know, you hear biblical stories of helping the blind to see. And I truly believe that this is what we're struggling with. We're trying to help the blind to see. But I absolutely love it. This is my challenge. The gauntlet's been thrown down at my door. They want to steal my pension. They want to control my future. They want to control every part of my life and kill me early if possible. Well, I've picked up the gauntlet and said I'm not having it. My job is to live as long as I can and expose what you're doing.
Well, that is the point, and once again, it is up to each of us to have that attitude and to use this moment of time, which is so amazing. And of course, you point out that we've been talking about this as a species for thousands of years now, and trying to get people to understand the bigger picture. And I think that is the ongoing quest, but not to be, I suppose, fear-mongering about it, but certainly we are moving into times, technologically speaking, where really this is a game for all the marbles, and we are moving into a period of time where conceivably, I mean, what it means to be a human being is going to change drastically in the next generation or two, given the types of technology that are being implemented in the rise of transhumanism and tinkering with the genome, and all of these incredible technologies that weren't even conceivable just a few short years ago are now very much not just science fiction, but science reality. And I think it's incumbent on us to wake up and to grow up very, very quickly, because, again, if we allow these technologies to get out of our control and to be used for purposes of ill rather than good, then we are going to find ourselves in a very sticky situation very soon. So it is a remarkable time to be alive, and I do feel blessed to be able to do what I'm doing and to talk to people all around the world and to be part of this conversation. And if I didn't think we were going to win this, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. So obviously, I think we can achieve what we want to achieve. We can break through the walls of conditioning, and that's, I think, what we all have to basically get up in the morning and do. And exactly as you say, I don't even remember what the word boredom means. I haven't been bored in years, because this planet is just too remarkable to have time sitting there being bored.
It is. This is our time. It's always been our time, actually. This isn't a unique moment in time. It's just another unique opportunity that time gives us. I mean, Mother Nature gives us a brand new day every day. And she says, look, okay, yesterday didn't work out well for you, so here's another day. Have another go. But don't make it Groundhog Day. Don't do the same things. Because what didn't work yesterday, it isn't going to work today either. So if you're having a problem, do something differently, because every day she gives us the gift of a new day, and a gift is a present. And she says, have another one, have another go. It's a marvelous system, it really is. And I truly believe as well that, yes, it's going to be difficult, but everything's difficult that's worthwhile. If it's too easy, you wouldn't do it. So I agree with you. This is our chance. Yes, we're going to have to suffer. Yes, it's going to be difficult. Yes, it'll get darkest before dawn. But everything else is pointless. This is what I want to do.
That's exactly right. Well, it sounds like we're on the same page, and I certainly hope the listeners out there are as well, because something that I always try to stress in my work is that what I do is really nothing special, and I wouldn't want anyone to take it that way. What I'm doing is just basic stuff that anyone out there can do, and that's why I try to include information not only that will inform people, but also hopefully spur people into action themselves, because again, I don't think that I'm anything special, and I don't think I'm going to change the world by myself. It's something that we can only do when everyone starts taking up this gauntlet and doing the same thing. And again, everyone has their own perspective, their own information, their own way of approaching the problems. And I think if we don't start this societal conversation about where we're heading, then we're in for some dark times indeed. So let's all pick up the gauntlet.
James Corbett, thank you very much for your time. Please tell us how we can keep up with what you're doing. I'm aware of your websites, but please let everybody else know where you are.
Well, the best way to reach me and my work is CorbettReport.com. That's CORBETT report.com. And I have thousands of hours now of absolutely free media, audio, video, articles available for download there. And you can subscribe to my RSS feeds, etc., for free to keep up with what I'm doing. And I've got a radio show and a podcast and a regular video series and a subscriber newsletter and all sorts of information there. So I hope people will check it out.
Well, James, thank you for joining us today. It has been my pleasure to say thank you from the UK and all associated with the station. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for your time, and please keep doing what you're doing.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now it's our turn.